Tonight, the final hours until Election Day. The candidates in the battlegrounds on the last day of the campaign. Donald Trump holding 5 rallies in 4 states. Joe Biden concentrating on critical Pennsylvania. Our new poll, where the race there stands. The clash over Dr. Fauci, the president suggesting he could fire him after the election. And what the president is saying in defense of supporters who swarmed a Biden campaign bus. Also, with nearly 100 million early votes already cast, could it be an election night cliffhanger? The states where we could know first and where it could take days, even months. The president already threatening legal action to stop the count. On the eve of the election, COVID surging to all-time highs, nearly 100,000 cases in a day. Hospitals warning they may ration care. El Paso calling in a 4th mobile morgue, and massive parties over the weekend. Could they have been super spreaders? The deadly terror attack near a synagogue in Vienna. Shootouts in the streets. What we're now learning. Tensions running high, businesses boarded up ahead of potential unrest. How to deal with your election anxiety. And 3 days after that powerful earthquake, the miracle rescues.
This is NBC Nightly News. Decision 2020. Here is Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. Here we are now, just hours from Election Day 2020. As the nation closes in on 100 million early votes cast, Donald Trump and Joe Biden are tonight surgically trying to pick off the states that could push them over the line. Biden tonight, according to polls, holding a lead in key battleground states, but the margins are narrow. The president looking to close ground with a final pinch grounded in grievances and doubt about the election process itself. We have it all covered. Let's begin our coverage with Jeff Bennett. And Jeff, what is the president hoping for in these final hours?
Lester, President Trump's campaign is counting on a surge in Election Day turnout among his supporters to fuel the president's path to re-election. His campaign drawing confidence from the size of his crowds, despite polling showing him behind. President Trump crisscrossing the country tonight to close out the 2020 campaign.
North Carolina, thank you very much. We win Pennsylvania, we win the whole deal. You know that, huh?
By the end of the night, the president will have logged nearly 2,500 miles, with rallies in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Battlegrounds he won in 2016, but where polls say the race is either tight or he's trailing. Part of the president's closing argument, a threat to fire Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Don't tell anybody, but let me wait till a little bit after the election.
That's after Fauci told the Washington Post about the pandemic. The Biden campaign is taking it seriously from a public health perspective, while the president's focus is reopening the country. Back on the trail, the president teeing up uncertainty over the election outcome, pushing the false argument that results not declared on election night are illegitimate.
We should know the result of the election on November 3rd, the evening of November 3rd. That's the way it's been, and that's the way it should be.
All that as the FBI tells NBC News it's investigating after Trump supporters surrounded a Biden campaign bus in Texas Friday. The president insisting his supporters were being helpful, not threatening.
Do you see the way our people, they were protecting his bus yesterday?
The president tweeting today they did nothing wrong. Republican Senator Marco Rubio backing him up.
Did you see it? All the cars on the road with the... We love what they did.
A Biden campaign official says the vehicles tried to run the bus off the road. Tensions high as the president fights to the final moment to secure a second term. Jeff Bennett, NBC News, Traverse City, Michigan.
I'm Kristen Welker. Tonight, Joe Biden closing out his campaign in battleground Pennsylvania, appearing with Lady Gaga.
You guys can own this election.
After hitting the key state of Ohio and again blasting the president over his handling of COVID-19 and the president's suggestion he may fire Dr. Anthony Fauci.
I got a better idea. Elect me and I'm going to hire Dr. Fauci. And we're going to fire Donald Trump.
Biden making 4 stops in Pennsylvania today, Kamala Harris with 5, while former President Obama going to Georgia and Florida to try to energize Black and Latino voters with turnout in some areas below expectations.
Tomorrow, after 4 years of failure, You have the power to change America.
But Pennsylvania will be key, and the polls here are tightening. Our new NBC News Marist poll showing Biden's lead shrinking to just 5 points, which is within the margin of error. Meanwhile, President Trump drawing tens of thousands of supporters to rallies here. Pennsylvania's Democratic Lieutenant Governor tweeting a photo of one packed Trump rally, warning Democrats that's not Photoshop. The president is popular in PA, urging them to vote, tweeting, "Bank your ballot." We spoke to critical voters in the Philadelphia suburbs, including supporters of the president. What is the biggest issue for you?
Economy, really.
You think he's done a good job on the economy?
I do, yeah, absolutely.
And Biden. Why Biden and Harris?
Because of what's going on in the world, the divisiveness, trying to entice the hateness, and it's just horrible. We need a change. The people are suffering.
And Kristen joined me now. Kristen, what expectations are the Biden campaign setting tonight?
Well, Lester, the Biden campaign insists Pennsylvania is not must-win for them, but they are fighting so hard here because it is very difficult for President Trump to win re-election without winning Pennsylvania again. Biden will be back here tomorrow. Lester.
All right, Kristen, thanks very much. And we know that counting the vote might take days in some places, and state laws permit that. But as you heard, President Trump again suggested that counting should stop tomorrow. Tom Costello tonight with a reality check.
Never in the country's history has a winner been formally declared the night of the election. But with record numbers of voters, President Trump on Sunday falsely claimed votes should not be counted after Tuesday.
I think it's a terrible thing when people or states are allowed to tabulate ballots for a long period of time after the election is over.
But counting takes time, days, even weeks. And the president surely knows that. Here are the facts. 21 states and D.C. allow ballots postmarked by Election Day to be counted if they arrive after Election Day, including critical swing states Pennsylvania, Minnesota, North Carolina, and Ohio. But tonight, a big concern. The Postal Service, accused of slowing mail delivery to help President Trump, reports that on Saturday it moved only 62% of mailed-in ballots on time in central Pennsylvania and 64% in Atlanta, compared to a 95% overall on-time delivery in June. Some states are already counting millions of early votes, including Florida, Arizona, and North Carolina. Other battlegrounds like Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania can't begin counting until tomorrow. Pennsylvania's governor out with a new commercial trying to reassure voters.
It may take a little longer than we're used to, even a few days, but that's okay, because it's critical that your vote is counted.
Even veteran Republicans are concerned by the president's rhetoric.
Look, I'm a Republican. I agree with the president when he's right, but he's wrong about this. This type of rhetoric about rigged elections ultimately invites comparison to places like Russia, to places like Iran, places where they really do rig elections.
In fact, every state has its own deadline for certifying election results. The real deadline, December 14th. That's when state electors must cast their ballots in the Electoral College. Experts caution as states come in tomorrow night, they may trend blue or red, but all that matters is the final vote count, and they could all change their colors. Lester?
All right, Tom Costello, thanks. Let's bring in our political director and moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd. Chuck, how do these two candidates reach the prize, 270 electoral votes?
Well, in theory, there's a ton of ways for them to get there, but what we're really figuring out, there's really just two paths. There's a northern path and a southern path here. Watch our bars here as I move these states. For now, we're going to assume that Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan go Democrat. We're going to put Iowa and Ohio in the Republican column. And look what that leaves us here. You've got these 5 Sun Belt states plus Pennsylvania. And look at the importance of the Sun Belt to Donald Trump. Just one win by Biden, and he hits 270 or more. Arizona would do it. Texas would do it. Florida would do it. Georgia would do it. Or North Carolina would do it. Just one. But if the president holds all the Sun Belt, then where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with Pennsylvania. And if you're trying to figure out why there's so much threat of lawsuit about Pennsylvania, is because they've done this path too. They've done these paths too. And each side gets stuck at times with the 20 electoral votes in Pennsylvania, Lester.
All right, Chuck, thanks very much. And for voters, the pandemic is front and center as it continues to explode across the country yet again, ravaging families and pushing hospitals to the brink. Here's Miguel Almaguer now on the alarming surge.
As our nation approaches a staggering 100,000 new infections a day, hospitals in states like Utah, overwhelmed by a flood of COVID cases, say they may have to soon ration care. In Wisconsin, where the positivity rate is roughly 30%, retired healthcare workers are being asked to return to the front lines. For nurses and doctors inside this ICU in South Dakota, every statistic is a patient. Deaths in this state have risen 52%.
As we're all trying to keep our cool on the outside, on the inside, we're like, got so many patients I need to see.
With the city of El Paso receiving its 4th mobile morgue after a surge in fatalities, scenes like these showing thousands partying on Halloween have first responders outraged. But smaller events, like a gathering inside a Vermont hockey rink, also have led to at least 89 infections, now spread across 18 towns. In St. Louis, LaWanda Griffin survived the virus, but lost her mother and 2 great-uncles to COVID.
Oh, it was the hardest thing.
On election eve, the pandemic and politics are colliding at polling sites. Experts say voting in person is as safe, if not safer, than going to the grocery store. Lester?
All right, Miguel, thank you. Breaking tonight, what authorities are calling a deadly terror attack in Vienna, Austria, that began near the city's central synagogue. Richard Engel now with late details.
Police engaged in a gun battle in central Vienna tonight and came under fire themselves. Police say several gunmen, you can see them here, dressed in white, carrying rifles, opened fire in 6 different locations. Austria's chancellor calling it a terror attack. The shootings were centered around the city's main synagogue, closed at the time. The area is also full of bars and restaurants, crowded tonight before a COVID lockdown begins tomorrow.
People were sitting outside and he was shooting at the people.
Tensions were already high as jihadist attacks are on the rise in Europe, including just last week in France. Lester?
Disturbing developments. All right, Richard, thank you. Tonight, President Trump is holding a rally in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where protests erupted after the police shooting of Jacob Blake in August. Now it's looking more like this election could be won or lost in suburbs like Kenosha. But is the president's law and order message resonating with voters? Here's Gabe Gutierrez with that.
Tonight in battleground Wisconsin, the fight for the suburbs is underway. President Trump rallying supporters in Kenosha. More than 2 months since the unrest following the police shooting of Jacob Blake.
What happened to downtown Kenosha happened to me in my backyard. Had law and order been called in sooner, probably we would not have lost lives.
In his battleground blitz over the last week, the president has been hammering home his campaign theme of law and order.
Antifa and the anarchists, they view the suburbs as next.
I'm saving suburbia. We believe in law and order. Suburban women, please love me, please love me.
In 2016, suburban women supported Hillary Clinton over Mr. Trump by 11 points. A recent poll has Joe Biden up 19 points among the same group.
The simple truth is, Donald Trump failed to protect America. So now, he's trying to scare America.
Across the country, major cities are preparing for potential violence after the election, from New York to Philadelphia to Los Angeles. Even the White House plans to install a non-scalable fence. In Kenosha, downtown businesses have been boarded up for months.
What worries you most about the president being reelected?
Basically, the last 4 years happening again. He's not trustworthy.
4 years ago, President Trump won Wisconsin by less than 23,000 votes. Even though he trails in the polls here, his supporters warned not to count him out again. Lester?
All right, Gabe Gutierrez in Kenosha, thank you. Another all-important block of voters, African Americans, with the number of black Americans eligible to vote reaching a record 30 million this year. NBC's Blaine Alexander on some of what's weighing into that critical vote.
There's the South Carolina Biden supporter with everything on the line.
Our livelihoods, our well-being, our everyday is at stake in this election.
You know, people say, well, vote like your life depends on it. No, we're voting because our lives depend on it.
The first-time voter in Minnesota working to get out the vote for President Trump.
I am a conservative because I am Christian, and as of right now, my political affiliations or my views align with the Republican Party.
And the Georgia voter, driven by two things:
racial tensions and the pandemic.
And that's what's bringing you out to vote.
Yes.
Now both parties are scrambling to court that crucial black vote.
Black lives matter, period.
To every black American, vote for Trump.
More than a third of America's black voters live in some of the country's most competitive states, including Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio.
And the biggest concentration is right here in Georgia, where black voters comprise 32% of the electorate.
I wanted just to come out and just do what I can.
With 30 million eligible black voters, more than ever before, they could sway the election, particularly in those swing states. It's why Kayla Bino spent $600 to fly from Baltimore to Fort Lauderdale when her Florida absentee ballot didn't show up.
I would not have been able to forgive myself if I didn't vote in this election. I honestly feel that the stakes are far too high to be complacent.
Now, all eyes are on Tuesday and turnout. Blaine Alexander, NBC News, Atlanta.
In just 60 seconds, election stress disorder. Yes, it's a real thing. We're going to tell you how to recognize it, how to deal with it. With just hours until the polls open, there are a lot of Americans feeling it tonight. Election anxiety. Stephanie Goss now, and what you can do to cope with it.
The election is coming at us fast and at times angry. The campaigns, the ads, the Twitter feeds, polls and pundits, and finger wagging.
No peace! No peace!
The voting lines are long and there are fears of unrest. All of it while the pandemic only gets worse. No wonder there is more stress than ever.
I'm seeing a tremendous amount of people dealing with stress, anxiety, panic-type symptoms as the election gets closer.
Doctors even have a name for it: election stress disorder. Take a deep breath. There are ways to make it better. Limit social media and TV, avoid political conversations that can sometimes get ugly, and get some exercise. A walk can do wonders. Psychologists say look for signs that you may need more help, having trouble getting out of bed or not eating. Doctors and therapists are doing more virtual visits, making it safer and easier to schedule appointments. Finally, resist the urge to worry about what can't be controlled or what hasn't happened. Instead, go vote. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, New York.
All right, up next, will Americans trust the election results? The incredible moment caught on camera. Rescuers pulling a 3-year-old girl out alive after she was trapped for 3 days in the rubble from that deadly earthquake in Turkey. Workers calling it a miracle. Also rescued today, a 14-year-old girl. Back home, as millions get ready to head to the polls just hours from now, an alarming number of Americans are losing faith in the country's election system. Cynthia McFadden now on why trust is plummeting and what can be done about it.
The only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged.
Is by the chicanery going on relative to polling places.
Little surprise, perhaps, the nation's trust in our voting system at the core of the American democracy is at an all-time low. Polls show over 40% of Americans are not confident the election results will be counted accurately.
I just don't feel like our votes matter. You know, I feel like it's rigged.
A democracy is like Tinkerbell. If people don't believe in it, it dies.
David Litt is a former speechwriter for President Barack Obama.
American democracy isn't over, but it's under threat in a way it has not been in most Americans' lifetimes.
How important is trust to the functioning of our democracy?
Oh, in a democracy, trust is probably the most precious resource.
Historian Doris Kearns Goodwin says even in some of the country's darkest days, trust was high. 77% of people believed government would do the right thing. It began to slide downward in the 1960s. It has cratered now.
Now, when you take that same poll, it's down to 20%.
What was different then? Consider FDR's speech after Pearl Harbor.
A date which will live in infamy.
FDR said to the people, I have absolute confidence in your ability to hear the worst, but you have to have absolute confidence that the government is keeping nothing from you. If that bond can be created, then the level of trust can go back up again. I think this huge vote we're seeing is the beginning of that process of rebuilding the trust and mobilization of the spirit of the American people. I gotta believe that, I do.
First steps. Cynthia McFadden, NBC News.
In a moment, I'll have some final thoughts on this pivotal moment. Finally tonight, at about this time tomorrow evening, the first polls in the 2020 election will begin to close. If that just gave you a knot in your stomach, it's okay. Me too. Let's face it, this campaign has often felt like a powder keg with a fuse burning down to November 3rd. And it's allowed our minds to sometimes drift into dark places about potential for violence and whether the outcome will be accepted. This is a deep breath moment. We will need all of our collective patience and critical thinking skills tomorrow. Yes, democracy is messy, but we've got to let it work. If not for ourselves, then for our children, who you know are watching us. That's Nightly News for this Monday. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.
Привет.
Comes with a lot of great questions for discussion. He's playing the Bach French Suite right now, number 4, and the air from that. And forgive me, I'm just pulling this out of my memory here. I've never played it. Something like that. Anyway, he was saying, you know, a lot of times when I'm doing these crosses or doing different figures, my hands get uneven. Do you have any tips for gaining that evenness? And I think I posted a video about a year ago that we talked a lot about that. I dedicated the video to him as well. But we discovered another thing that I wanted to share today. And it just has to do with shifting your focus. and it will pay huge dividends. I remember even in my early 20s, after I'd won international competitions and you know, finishing up my master's, I still remember I was a little self-conscious about certain scales sometimes when in pieces, and they sounded fine, but like they felt not great. And I remember it was because I was doing exactly what I was talking to Jim about the other day, is I was focusing on the cross. Now, when we focus on crosses, what I mean by a cross is there, switching positions. So here's a position, here's a position. A position basically just means you don't have to, you know, shift your hand at all. It's just right there. But then shifting, and students always focus on those shifts. They always, or the crosses, excuse me. They just focus on that cross right there. What ends up happening is two things. The first thing is they will usually tense up a little bit and say, oh, kill me, here's the cross. And they have a heavy thumb. That's the first thing I see a lot. Second of all, when they anticipate the cross, what ends up happening is they rush the stuff before. I mean, yes, if you're a spiritual person, you believe we're spiritual beings. If you're an atheist, you believe we're just animals. But regardless, you know, regardless of your spiritual belief systems, we still do have mammal instincts. We have this fight or flight response within us. If we're getting chased by a bear, we're going to be able to run faster than we usually do. And the same thing goes with piano. And the fight or flight response for piano is like the worst thing ever, because we're dealing with these micro movements. The thing that a lot of people do when they're anticipating a cross, they actually rush the stuff before. As a subconscious, I believe it's subconscious because I don't think anyone would do this on purpose, but it's a subconscious way of saying, I've got to get through this material quickly so that I can have plenty of time to do that cross. Now, we all know that's counterintuitive because we want our scale to sound even, but what ends up happening is people go like that. And he said, my student Jim, he's like, I'm just, you know, I can play all this difficult material, but sometimes I'm terrified of a C major scale. And he's like, especially C major, you know, a lot of times B major or scales, even with black keys, kind of give you something to hold on to, like a little, like if you're rock climbing, it's like a wall hold that you can grab onto, those black keys. But being on all the whites, do you have any tips on how to get that more even? I have two things that I want to share today. The first is, I want you to think of two things. First of all, I was actually teaching another student, Jim, same name actually, funny enough, in New York this morning, and he's just starting out, just a beginner, but a really awesome guy, doing great, and we were going over scales for the first time, and he said, now, when I get to my next position, do I shift my hand up here, or do I, you know, like, pull that thumb under really hard? I was like, you want a little bit of both. You don't want a hard thumb under. And wow, that's probably going to cause a whole mess of comments in the comments section below. A lot of people, thumb under is this big controversy. Go watch any great pianist. They do a little bit of thumb under. Anyway, so you're just not going to be able to play scales super fast without a little bit of thumb under. But at the same time, I was telling him something that was kind of interesting. He said, he asked this question. I said, if I'm playing a scale slowly, you'll see a little bit more rotation. A little more movement in the hand because the scale is moving slowly. When momentum builds up and there is less time spent on each key, you're not going to hear those crosses as much. So instead of thinking of just focusing on that cross, I want you to think of shifting your hand as well as this speed of the scale increases. So what I mean by that is as you get faster, you're going to need almost no thumb under technique because the momentum of the keys, when you're going max tempo, like I always use this example, Murray Pryor, because it changed my life. It was Murray Pryor playing Mozart E-flat major concerto. It was just gorgeous, and I was like, how does he do that? I was 9 when I was listening to that, and I was playing, that was my first ever concerto that I played, and I was playing it super slow. But as I got more and more into my teen years, I kept asking myself, how is he doing that? And basically, you can watch my Pearly Sound video. Just type in Josh Wright Pearly Sound. It'll go more into detail about that. But basically, it comes down to just doing a finger staccato. In a fast tempo, and that gets you that speed. So you need less crosses and more shifting as you get higher speeds. When you're going really slow, you need pretty much no shifting because it's all happening just within the hand there. So, getting back to my student, the physics professor, playing the Bach English Suite number 4, the air, I said, you need to focus on shifting and just gently crossing under to get into that new position. Now, you might be thinking, what are you talking about? You just told us you shift as you get faster and you do cross. But what I'm saying is everyone focuses on that shift, that cross. They go, and if you just think, hey, I'm just gonna hang out in this position, and then when it's time, I will shift into this next position. Will that require a slight cross just to make this transition smoother? Sure. But then I just go into this position. Okay, so it's just here, lift, here. Okay? A little less of a pause, a little tiny thumb under. Now a little more thumb under, but... And pretty soon... you'll get these buttery smooth scales by focusing on, hey, I'm just thinking about going to the 3. And then when the time is right, I shift into this next position. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1. Versus 1, 2, oh shoot, kill me now, my cross is coming up. And then what most students do is they contort their hand in all sorts of ways. I've seen it all. It's just crazy. People wing out their elbow, they go up with their wrist, they smash that thumb. Just relax. If I asked you to play this, fine. What about this? Fine. That's great. Now, all I want you to do is this. Just that slight connection between the two. But I want you to keep thinking in terms of those positions. I do not want you focusing on the cross. I want you thinking this position, then just a smooth transition to the next one. Then a smooth transition to the next one. Okay? I'm going to grab my score here. Forgot to grab this before the video started.
Ну делать-то нехер. Музыкант какой-то, кстати, был, да? Кто там играл? Спать уже пора. Так,
Ever wonder why so many people say they want to learn guitar, but very few actually learn to play? It's simple. Too many people try to learn with YouTube videos, and guess what? It doesn't work. YouTube seems like the perfect place to go to learn guitar. There are millions of free guitar videos, so what's the problem? Most YouTube guitar lessons are terrible. They don't teach you the right way to play, so even after a ton of practicing, the song you're learning won't sound right. Beginners pick up on bad techniques that are hard to correct later on, making everything harder to play than it should be. There's no lesson plan, so you spend all your time searching for videos and getting frustrated. If you're looking for an easy way to learn guitar that works, check out guitartricks.com. Guitartricks teaches with step-by-step fun video lessons which are all connected, so you always know where to go next. Lessons are in 4K and use multiple camera angles so you can see exactly what's going on. Unlike YouTube, you can slow down and loop sections of video to practice different parts, and professionally notated guitar tabs are right next to the video. With over 11,000 lessons, Guitartricks teaches almost every popular song you can think of from...
Now let's discuss these late-breaking developments with the former Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson that served during the Obama administration. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for joining us. As you can see and as you sense yourself, Americans are on edge right now. What's your take? What's your reaction when you see this new fencing going up around the entire White House grounds? You see all these stores, these businesses boarding up, not only in the nation's capital, but in so many cities around the country right now. The fear of disturbances, irrespective of who wins this election.
Wolf, I don't like what I see. I was responsible for the security of the White House compound when I was Secretary of Homeland Security. The sight of businesses boarding up their windows across America, it's unnerving. I don't like what I see. I cannot discount the possibility of unrest, violence on Election Day, in the aftermath of Election Day. And so I suspect that over the coming days, when roughly 1/2 of America is going to be very, very unhappy with the election result and tensions are running high, that we're going to have to count on our nation's leaders, Republicans and Democrats, to help bring the temperature down, to tell people that there are things more important than the outcome of a particular election for 4 years, for a 4-year period. And so I cannot discount the possibility of civil unrest here. It's very troubling to see this, but all Americans should realize that there are things more important than the outcome of a single election: the preservation of our democracy, our public safety, and I hope that those with a public voice can be counted on to help bring the temperature down. Unfortunately, we have not seen that from our president in the last 4 years.
Walk us through the decision-making process. You were the Secretary of Homeland Security. How does that unfold, a decision to put a huge fence now around the White House on the eve of a presidential election? I've never seen that before a presidential election. I don't know if you have, but it's pretty extraordinary.
I've never seen anything like that. And in fact, in my experience, this is about as high as emotions can run just before a presidential election. My educated guess is that the Secret Service, those in Homeland Security, those in law enforcement are looking at law enforcement sensitive reports about possible civil unrest and are taking adequate precautions. The White House compound in ordinary circumstances is the most secure building in America. For the Secret Service to take this added step is quite significant in my view.
And we do know the president will be at the White House tomorrow night. He'll be watching the election results. They will have a reception for supporters in the White House tomorrow night as well. So they want to make sure everything is secure. In a situation like this, you got to err on the side of caution, obviously, because everyone is so nervous. But it's so critically important as the results come in, Mr. Secretary, for the leaders of this country, Republicans and Democrats, everyone, to tell the country, you know what, this is democracy, this is an election, let's see what happens, calm down.
Yes, that's my point. Elections, state by state, are rarely certified on the night of the election. They're rarely formally called by state election officials. You folks in the networks have developed very, very sophisticated means for projecting the winner of an election. I remember well, Wolf, in November 2008, you projected Barack Obama was going to be the President of the United States. That was a call made by the networks. That was not the final tally. And so I suspect that this may be a very close election, and we may have to wait for a number of days. And during that period, you're right, it's incumbent upon those of us with a public voice, Republicans and Democrats, to work to bring the temperature down, to bring the anxiety down until we get a final result. We're used to peaceful transitions of power in this free democracy, and I hope that this year is not an exception.
The president had this to say earlier about Pennsylvania, which is going to be counting ballots that arrive within 3 days after Election Day, even if they were postmarked before Election Day. But I want you to listen to what the president had to say. It's very disturbing.
And when the Supreme Court gave you an extension, they made a very dangerous situation, and I mean dangerous, physically dangerous, and they made it a very, very bad, they did a very bad thing for this state. They did a very bad thing for this nation. You have to have a date. You can't extend dates. The danger that could be caused by that extension, and especially when you know what goes on in Philadelphia, and it's been going on for years. So, Governor, open up your state, and please don't cheat, Governor. Please don't cheat. Because we're all watching. We're all watching you, Governor. We have a lot of eyes on the governor and his friends. A couple of other governors out there, too.
So what's your reaction when the president levels what clearly sounds like a threat to Governor Wolf of Pennsylvania?
Wolf, I'll repeat what I've said before. People do listen to their leaders, particularly the president. A downward spiral in rhetoric makes the previously intolerable tolerable, and for the deranged, dangerous people who live among us, violence inevitable. We got a taste of that in Michigan. Fortunately, through the good work of law enforcement, state and federal, that conspiracy was stopped in its tracks. People do listen to their leaders, which is why those with a microphone, particularly the president, need to be responsible.
Что такое? Что такое? Да, это наоборот. Чё, никак не такое, так вот. Так, да. Почему это? Нет, а что ты... Это что ты сказал? Зачем?
in their rhetoric. There could be dangerous consequences if someone with a bullhorn the size of what President Trump has is not responsible.
Yeah, he says we should stop counting ballots on Tuesday, tomorrow night. After that, we shouldn't count anymore. But we've always counted ballots after the Tuesday of Election Day. You were the general counsel at the Department of Defense. You know, military ballots from hundreds of thousands of troops around the world, they always come in late and they're always counted.
Wolf, my son, wears the uniform of our nation. He cast a ballot from overseas. I want my son's vote counted. He's a patriotic American who is serving our country like many others who wear the uniform of this nation. They deserve to have their votes counted. If someone is qualified to vote, someone votes on time, if someone sends in a ballot that is postmarked on or before Election Day, they deserve to have their votes counted. I cannot imagine a reason why someone would want to stop the counting of votes from those who are qualified to vote and who have voted.
Yeah, that's what the president is saying, and it's outrageous, I must say. Jay Johnson, the former Secretary of Homeland Security, thanks so much for joining us.
Intimidating. Наоборот. Да, 30 вариантов. Ладно, нет, не волнуйтесь. Правильно, что не могу я говорить. Не надо на это есть. Неплохо. Народ, явно ты не съешь, что ли, нет? Да, да, есть. Сейчас ты смотришь, что ты говоришь вообще. Тихо. Ты чё? Ты чё, блин, вообще? Нет, наоборот. Ты, блин, думал. Ой, какой малый. вот это тебе идет, я понимаю. А, вот это, даже нет, он сидит. А, ну не такое. Да. Слишком жизненно. Вот нет. Это единственное самое. Качество-то вообще ужасное. Вот это я понял. No crash, no crash, no. Понял. Понял. мелочи.
Там вообще просто YouTube еще загнулся весь. Морда книга, ну-ка, лица книг, расскажи нам тайну. Поведай. Поведай. Ну, книга лиц есть. Ну ты что, книга видишь? Там, наверное, вообще ужасно. Понял уже, да? Ты чё? Да вы что? Какой-то видео. Да, вот это мне себе так. Чем? Качество хуже будет. А, вот там. Понимаешь? Ну, пусть так будет. Ладно, пусть так будет. Наоборот. Так нет, наоборот. Хорошо. Хорошо. Ладно, тогда. Что еще скажешь? GG. Там сейчас все нормально. GG, если хорошо. Оптимизировано. Ой. Так, что еще надо? Это что еще? Ну, кстати, отвечали, кстати, качество нормально лежит. Они там ко всему уже привыкшие. Ну ладно, ладно. Размышляй больно, то потому что вообще от кого-то никакого ничего. Чего ты не можешь помнить?
Понятно, нет, что ты тут мне еще сказать,